What's up everybody, another beautiful day in the Dragon Isles, and today I'll be covering everything you need to know about Enhancement Shamans. Going over different builds, both a Elementalist build and a physical build, single target and AoE approaches to them, how to play, rotation priorities, stat weights, all that good stuff. So first things first, let's go over the different builds, and I'll have links for all of them in the descriptions below that you can import. So the two builds that people are currently running is the so-called Elementalist and or the physical build that I call the Stormstriker. Now as far as which build is the best currently, to my knowledge, they're both very close and competitive, each filling their own niche. Elementalist build is for sure a lot stronger with low gear. The physical build really comes together once you start getting more mastery and haste. The Elementalist build is also a lot more consistent and has less peaks and valleys in their damage compared to the physical build, as you play around low cooldown like Primordial Wave, which is on a 45-second cooldown. So in dungeons, you have big burst for pretty much each and every pack, whereas the physical build has great damage for all packs and insane damage whenever Ascendancy procs. But if it doesn't proc, it does suffer a lot more than the Elementalist. And it's more spammy. On single target, however, they're a lot more even, but there's niches for both of them, and it doesn't hurt to be able to play both of them, depending on encounters or what you're doing, especially since you pretty much use the same gear and stats for both builds. So let's start with the Elementalist. So let's take a look at the tree, key talents, and how they work. They have Molten Assault for Lava Lash CDR, and so that it spreads Flame Shock to up to 4 nearby targets, and Flame Shock caps out on 6 targets. Fire Nova with Swirling Maelstrom for more AoE pad and a ton of on-demand Maelstrom generation, up to 6 Maelstrom if Flame Shock targets are capped, and then it also does an insane amount of damage. Ashen Catalyst, so that Flame Shock ticks, increases Lava Lash damage and reduces its cooldown. So the more targets with Flame Shock, the more your Lava Lash will slap, and slap more frequently. Lashing Flame, which is very important, it does so Lava Lash increases Flame Shock damage by 100% on whichever target you slap with Lava Lash for 20 seconds. This is of course followed by the ever spicy Hot Hand to get those greatly empowered Lava Lash with pretty much no cooldown, to tab target around to activate Lashing Flame on multiple targets. Now to tie in with this, you'll get Primordial Wave so that we can fire off 150% damage increase, 10 stacked lightning bolts on up to 6 targets for some crazy burst. And this will be upgraded with Primal Maelstrom and Splintered Elements so that Primal Wave caps out your Maelstrom, and each additional lightning bolt you fire off increases your haste by 10% for an extreme amount of burst, as you'll be getting an insane amount of Wind Fury procs and everything else from all that haste. And it also reduces Lava Lash cooldown, which during Hot Hand brings it down to no cooldown, just slap away. We also get improved Raging and Overflowing Maelstrom for more Maelstrom spender damage. You can have 10 stacks and spend 10 Maelstrom stacks on our spells rather than 5, giving us a smoother rotation and bigger Maelstrom slap potential. Then there's Elemental Blast for some extra single target damage and buffs. Plus it slaps extremely hard on single target. Feral Spirits with Wolfie Doctor's Ancestry for more Maelstrom generation, and anytime you gain a stack of Maelstrom, you reduce Feral Spirit's cooldown by 2 seconds. So a 10 stacked Maelstrom spell is 26 CDR on your Wolfies. Yeah, they're gonna be up a lot. Now to fit the fantasy of the Elemental God, we'll of course be specking into Elemental Spirit, so either our nature, fire, or frosty damage will be increased depending on what poppers we get. And apart from this, we fill out the tree with stuff like Crash Lightning, Crashing Storm for more AoE, Storm's Wrath for a ton more Wind Fury and Stormbringer procs, and Elemental Weapons for more frost and fire damage. Now for single target, you'd go for almost the same build. The difference is you'd skip Crash Lightning and Crashing Storms and get Wind Fury Totem as well as Ice Strikes, and change Fire Nova to Hailstorm. So how does all of this play as far as rotation goes on AoE? Well, first of all, Enhancement has somewhat set priority of spells and abilities. Your rotation is incredibly erratic and can change back and forth depending on procs. So it's not linear in the sense of press Stormstrike, then Lava Lash, then X, then Y ability, then Stormstrike again. It's all just ifs and buts. But here's a basic priority list. Make sure to have Flame Shock up on your target. Spread Flame Shock with Lava Lash if there's less than 6 targets with it up. Lightning Bolt if you're at 10 stacks of Maelstrom with Primordial Wave buff active so it hits all Flame Shock targets. Otherwise, Chain Lightning if you're at 10 Maelstrom with no Primordial Wave buff. Fire Nova preferably with 6 targets on Flame Shock. Then Crash Lightning if you don't have Crash Lightning buff, as it enables you to AoE with Stormstrike, Lava Lash, and Ice Strikes. Sundering for some burst slappiness. Lava Lash Flame Shock targets to activate Lashing Flame, Flame Shock damage increase. Make sure to tab target and cycle between. And this is especially important with hot hand procs, as you'll be able to empower all of them. Then Elemental Blast with 5+ Maelstrom and Feral Spirits up. Doesn't matter what wolves, as they all increase Elemental Blast damage. Then you fill with Stormstrike, Flame, Frost Shock when needed. So this is a basic priority list as far as rotation goes. So for example, going into a new pack, I'd pop Feral Spirit instantly if ready, Flame Shock one target and Lava Lash it, spread Flame Shock, and then I'd Primordial Wave any target that doesn't have Flame Shock as it applies it as well. So I'd get to 6 Flame Shock targets instantly, as well as 10 stacks of Maelstrom. Fire off Lightning Bolt, which now slaps all Flame Shock targets and gives us up to 60% haste. Into a Fire Nova and a Crash Lightning, followed by a Sundering into the above rotation. And if I get a Hot Hand proc, I cycle through all the Flame Shock targets to make sure each and every one gets Slashing Flame debuff. Now as far as single target rotation goes, make sure Wind Fury Totem is up, Feral Spirits on cooldown, Lava Lash if you have a Hot Hand proc, or above 6 stacks of Ashen Catalyst, the Lava Lash damage increase. Otherwise you want a Lightning Bolt with 10 stacks of Maelstrom and Primordial Wave buff up. Otherwise Elemental Blast if you're above 5 stacks of Maelstrom and have any Wolfies up. Or you're about to hit 2 charges on it, as you always want one Elemental Blast to be on cooldown, followed by Ice Strike and then Frost Shock with Hailstorm active. So you need to spend Maelstrom before you Frost Shock. Lava Lash to refresh Flame Shock if it's about to drop. Elemental Blast if you're at 5 stacks. Lightning Bolt if you're at 10 stacks and no Elemental Blast charges. Stormstrike, Lava Lash, and Lightning Bolt if at 5 stacks and nothing else to press. But like I said earlier, the rotation is ever changing depending on procs and priority. You might plan to Crash Lightning next GD, but oopsie, you got a Hot Hand proc, and now you'd be better off pressing that. Or you were going to Lava Lash next global, but all of a sudden RNG gods sprinkle a gazillion Maelstrom procs, and you'd be better off firing off an extra Chain Lightning or Elemental Blast to not waste Maelstrom rather than Lava Lashing. Point being, a lot of things can happen that will change what you will or should be pressing next. But that's also half the fun with enhancement, keeps you guessing. And yeah, that's the Elementalist build, so let's move on to the Stormstriker. Let's get physical. So let's go over the talents for this build. Starting off, we have Legacy of the Frost Witch, which at 2 points gives you 25% physical damage increase for a few seconds after you've spent 10 Maelstrom, and doing so also resets Stormstrike. Deeply rooted elements with static accumulation and Thorim's invocation, so Stormstrike has a 7% chance to proc Ascendancy, and when Ascendance is up, you generate 2 Maelstrom every second. And Wind Strike, which is Stormstrike in Ascendancy, spends up to 5 Maelstrom on either Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, whichever you slapped away last. Witch Doctor's Ancestry for more Maelstrom generation and Feral Spirit CDR, and for AoE we get Alpha Wolfies, so that your Feral Spirits will AoE for a few seconds following a Chain or Crash Lightning. Then we get Sundering as well as Doom Winds to tie in with the physical portion of the build, and these play into the 25% physical damage increase windows we get from Legacy of the Frost Witch. We also get improved Raging and Overflowing Maelstrom. Our rotation would be pretty much unplayable without it on AoE, as we do be generating a whole lot of Maelstrom. Now for a more single target approach, you do pretty much the same as with the Elementalist build. You drop Fire Nova for Hailstorm, spec into Ice Strikes, Elemental Blast, Storm Flurry, and Wind Fury Totem. Remove Crash Lightning, Crashing Storm, and Sunder. And we won't be using the final Feral Spirit talent or capstone, if you will, either, as we don't need it to AoE and we don't want more elemental damage, we want physical. And depending on encounter, we can change deeply rooted elements for Ascendance. We have a reliable cooldown rather than a proc. So how does this build play? Well, for starters, physical build rotation on both AoE and single target, just like the Elementalist, is ever changing depending on procs, and this one procs a lot. There's Stormbringer procs upon Stormbringer procs upon, etc, etc. So if you get a ton of Stormbringer procs or Wind Fury procs, or your Maelstrom generation goes extra bananas, or if you get an Ascendancy proc, all of this factors into what you should be slamming next. But as far as priority goes, on AoE, you want a Feral Spirit pretty much on cooldown, and always follow up with either Crash Lightning or Chain Lightning to activate AoE. Spread Flame Shock with Lava Lash if there's less than 6 Flame Shocks out. Chain Lightning if you're at 10 stacks of Maelstrom or close to. Doom Winds. Then you want to Crash Lightning if you have Doom Winds buff up. Sundering with either Doom Winds, Legacy of the Frost Witch, or Feral Spirits out, or all of them or as many as possible. Fire Nova if cap targets, which is 6. Crash Lightning if you don't have its buffs, you don't AoE. Wind Strike, just make sure that Chain Lightning is is your most recent spender, not lightning bolt, else you get sad. Followed by stormstrike, fire nova if 4 or more targets with flame shock, fill with lava lash, frost shock, and flame shocks. Now again, a very basic prio list and should be used as such, a prio list, as your actual rotation will change constantly depending on your procs. And once you start building up some gear, you'll start getting more and more procs, and more often than not, you'll just be spewing out stormstrike and chain lightnings constantly. So a lot of the time you'd pop Wolfie, smash out a crash lightning and stormstrike into a chain lightning, into a stormstrike, stormstrike. You get the drift. And sometimes you'd stormstrike and nothing happens. Now for single target rotation, make sure Wind Fury is out, Feral Spirit on cooldown, Ascendancy on cooldown, Doom Winds, and during Doom Winds you want to Wind Strike, Storm Strike, Ice Strike as much as possible to trigger massive Wind Furies, followed by Ice Strike without Doom Winds, Frost Shock with 5 stacks of Hailstorm plus Ice Strike buff, Flame Shock if no Flame Shock, Lava Lash to refresh it if it's about to drop, Storm Strike with Earthen Weapon up or Legacy buff up, Elemental Blast if you're at 5 plus Maelstrom, Lightning Bolt if you're at 10 stacks and out of Elemental Blast charges, Frost Shock with Hailstorm buffs, and outside of this fill with regular Storm Strike, Lava Lashes, and Frost Shocks. The rotation is ever changing, so many factors, but once you get a feel for the ebb and flow of the builds, if you will, what does the most damage, what you should fire off next, and why, it'll get progressively less hectic. Another thing that I can greatly recommend, that I've used a lot over the years to learn enhancement and get a feel for it, which is the addon Hekili, which calculates what you should press next, and it is very accurate, so it's great both as a practice tool or just as a rotational support add-on, even for seasoned Enhancement Shaman players. It's just really good, and especially if you're not used to enhancement, pick it up, try out the rotation, see how everything works. Now with that said, let's hop into our stat weights instead. Luckily, our 2 best stats are the same for both builds, they just swap places as far as weight goes. Physical build is haste, mastery, crit, verse, and Elementalist is mastery, haste, crit, verse. So the physical build favors haste to fuel the spam train and get more procs, whereas the Elementalist loves mastery for, well, more elemental damage. That being said, eye level is bis in most cases, unless it's an accessory, so ring and neck, as they do not have primary stats. So you ideally want to have haste and mastery on those, even if you lose some eye levels for it. And on top of this, you really should sim yourself, as stat weights and gear can shift a lot. Keep on simming. Now, as far as enchants goes, for both builds you want to rock Sophic Devotion on both weapons or the cheaper Sophic Writ. Waking stats on chest, Fierce Armor Kit or the cheaper Reinforced Armor Kit. Plains Runner's Breeze on your booties, and either Mastery or Haste on rings depending on build. For gems there's Fierce Illimited Diamond and Keen Ismerald for physical build, and Skillful Illimited Diamond and Keen Neltherite for Elementalist. Consumables will be using our Elemental Potion of Power or the fancier Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power, which is a tad more pricey. Files, Elemental Chaos is the most consistent file we can use, so should be used most of the time. File of Glacial Fury will be better if there's tons and tons of adds, so for M+ or raids with lots of adds spawning. And due to Wind Fury and Flame Tongue buff on our weapons, we can't use weapon augment consumables like weights or runes, so none of those. And for food, we either want Feast, Fated Fortune Cookie, or Sizzling Seafood Medley. Now lastly, as far as our class tree goes, there's few mandatory talents as far as DPS goes, but other than that, it's mostly pick and choose what kind of utility you need. But you can play with the build that's linked in the description and just swap around a few talents if you want other utility. Now the mandatory talents are Flurry, Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Fire and Ice, and Improved Lightning Bolt, but there's tons of great utility to fill it out with. May I recommend Interrupt and Purge? But yeah, that's pretty much it. All you need to know about enhancement for Dragonflight rating and M+. I hope this helps, and if there's anything you feel is unanswered, please hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this guide and if you'd like more Enhancement Shaman updates throughout the expansions. Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, it really helps me out. I stream progression and testing on Twitch, Stankie Gaming. Make sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me and my work. As a patron, you get access to the Stankie Gaming Discord, shoutouts and videos, and tons of other stuff, so check it out. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.